Morning of my sister's wedding, I was 300 feet underwater in my head and somehow still expected to wear a smile by 6 o'clock. I'd driven down from Annapolis the night before, 8 hours with the windows cracked just enough to keep me awake. Coffee going cold in the cup holder somewhere past Richmond. I hadn't slept well in the hotel. The air conditioning rattled all night, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw the after-action report sitting in my inbox, the one I still hadn't opened. My phone lit up at 7:15. It was my mother. "Don't bring up the Navy tonight. People don't want to hear about it at a wedding. Just be normal, Vivian." I read it twice, set the phone face down on the nightstand, sat on the edge of the bed for a minute, looking at the carpet. Just be normal. I'd been in the United States Navy for 11 years. I held the rank of commander. I'd spent the last 4 of those years running intelligence operations out of a building most people in Washington couldn't find on a map. My mother knew none of the specifics and had never asked. What she knew was that I wore a uniform, that I wasn't married, that I didn't come home often enough, and that my younger sister Bethany had just gotten engaged to a man named Patrick who coached youth hockey and had a very nice jaw and made everyone at every family gathering laugh right on schedule. Bethany was the one who made sense to them. She taught 2nd grade. She lived 20 minutes from my parents' house in Savannah. She called my mother every Sunday. She was getting married in the backyard of the house where we grew up, under string lights with a caterer and a florist and 200 guests and a photographer who'd already been posting Instagram previews for weeks. I was the one who sent cards on birthdays but forgot to call, the one who missed Thanksgiving 3 years in a row, the one my father introduced to people at church as our other daughter. She's in the military. We're not really sure what she does exactly. I'd made peace with most of that. What I had not made peace with was the text message. The rehearsal dinner was at a restaurant downtown, one of those places with exposed brick and Edison bulbs and menu items that don't have prices. Patrick's family had reserved the back room. I arrived 7 minutes late because I'd circled the block 4 times looking for street parking, which felt like a metaphor for something. My mother spotted me at the door and came over with her arms out, and for 1 second I thought it was going to be fine. "You look tired," she said, instead of hello. "I drove 8 hours yesterday. You should have flown." She straightened my collar, which I had not asked her to do. "Patrick's father is here. He's very prominent. He's a federal judge. Just." She paused. "Just don't make it weird." I looked at her. "What would I make weird?" She smiled in the way that means the conversation is over and moved back toward the table. Patrick's family filled one side of the room. His mother, his father, the federal judge, 2 brothers, a sister-in-law, assorted cousins. My family filled the other side. My father, who stood when he saw me and gave me a hug that lasted exactly as long as it needed to. My aunt and uncle from Charleston. 2 cousins I recognized from Christmas photos. And at the center of the table, Bethany, radiant in a cream dress, already laughing at something Patrick had said. She saw me and stood up. "Vivian." She crossed the room and hugged me properly, the way sisters do when they actually mean it. "I'm so glad you made it. I told you I would." "I know." She pulled back and looked at me. There was something in her eyes I couldn't quite read. Something careful. "Come sit with me." The dinner went fine until it didn't. Patrick's father, Judge Leonard Hargrove, was the kind of man who treated every room like a courtroom he was presiding over. He sat at the head of his side of the table and conducted conversation the way someone might conduct an audit. Methodical, pointed, efficient. He had silver hair and a way of looking at you that suggested he had already reached a conclusion and was just waiting for you to confirm it. Midway through the main course, he turned the table's attention to introductions. "Not formal," he said, "just so everyone knows who everyone is." He started with his own family, then gestured across the table to ours. My father introduced himself. "My mother. My aunt and uncle." Then he got to me. "And this is Bethany's older sister," he said. "Vivian. She's never quite figured out what she wanted to do." He laughed, a short, comfortable laugh, the kind that assumes the room will join in. "We keep hoping she'll settle down one of these days." 3 people laughed. I watched it happen in real time. My aunt's polite smile, one of Patrick's brothers covering his mouth, someone's wine glass being set down a little too carefully. Bethany stopped laughing. Her smile stayed on her face, but something went out behind her eyes. I felt it the way you feel a temperature drop, sudden and whole body. I had heard variations of this my entire adult life. Still hasn't found her footing. Bit of a late bloomer. You know how it is with some kids. I had learned to absorb it, but something about hearing it in front of a federal judge at my sister's rehearsal dinner after the text message that morning, something about the specific geometry of that moment made it land differently. I picked up my water glass. I took a sip. I set it back down. Judge Hargrove had already moved on. He was asking Patrick's brother about his law practice. I said nothing. Not then. What you need to understand about the Navy is that it does not prepare you for family dinners. It prepares you to remain calm in situations where remaining calm is genuinely difficult. It teaches you to assess information quickly and act on it deliberately. It does not teach you how to sit across from your mother at a rehearsal dinner while your father describes you to a federal judge as a woman who has never figured out what she wanted to do. What I wanted to do was leave. What I did instead was stay through dessert, help stack the gift bags by the door, and walk Bethany to her car. "I'm sorry," she said, before I could say anything. He meant exactly what he said. She was quiet. "I'm not angry at you," I said. "I just need you to know that I heard it." She nodded. Her eyes were bright in the way that means she's trying not to cry. "He doesn't know what you do, Vivian. None of them do. You never tell anyone." "I know. Maybe you should." I didn't answer that. I kissed her on the cheek and told her I'd see her in the morning and drove back to the hotel with the windows down, the warm Savannah air coming through, the city going dark around me. The wedding was at 4 p.m. The backyard of my parents' house had been transformed in the way backyards get transformed for weddings. White chairs in rows, an arch covered in greenery and white roses, a string quartet setting up near the garden wall. My mother had been working on this for 8 months. It showed in the best way. Whatever else I could say about her, she knew how to make a place beautiful. I took my seat in the family row. My father sat beside me and quietly took my hand, which surprised me. He'd never been good at that kind of gesture. "You look good," he said. The suit. I was wearing my dress whites. I'd almost worn civilian clothes. I'd packed both, went back and forth on it that morning in the hotel bathroom for longer than I'd like to admit, but I'd ironed the uniform the night before, and somewhere around 6 a.m, I decided that I was done making myself smaller to fit the room. My mother saw me when she came out of the house, and her face did something complicated. I held her gaze until she looked away. Patrick came down the aisle first with his best man, then his groomsmen, and I watched his face while Bethany appeared at the back of the aisle on my father's arm. Watch the way a person looks when they see the person they love walking toward them in front of everyone they know. It's a specific kind of undone. He looked completely undone. I thought about a lot of things during the ceremony. I thought about the report in my inbox that I still hadn't opened. I thought about my mother's text message. I thought about the word normal and what it has always meant in my family, which is quieter than you are, smaller than you've become, easier for us to explain at dinner parties. When the officiant said, "You may now kiss the bride," I was glad. Not just for Bethany, for all of it being over. The reception was in a tent on the lawn, a band, an open bar, past appetizers on silver trays. The kind of event where you could have a real conversation or avoid one entirely depending on how you managed your location. I was doing a reasonable job of the latter when Patrick's father found me near the bar. "Commander Hayes," he said. I turned. He was looking at me differently than he had the night before. Something had shifted in his face, not softened exactly. More like recalibrated. "Judge Hargrove," I said. "My son tells me he looked you up." He said it simply, no preamble. After dinner last night, Patrick had looked me up. I'd wondered if he might. It wasn't hard if you knew where to look and you had a reason to look carefully. He found your name attached to a commendation, a maritime interdiction operation. He wouldn't tell me the details. The judge paused. He was choosing his words in the way that people do when they're not accustomed to choosing them. "I owe you an apology for what I said last night." I looked at him for a moment. "You said what you thought was true. I said what I assumed. That's different." He extended his hand. I shook it. "I hope you'll forgive an old man for making assumptions." It wasn't everything. It wasn't the moment in front of everyone, the public correction, the full accounting, but it was something. It was more than I'd gotten from most people who'd said similar things across 35 years. "There's nothing to forgive," I said, which was only partially true, but was the right thing to say in a tent at a wedding with a band playing and my sister 20 feet away in her dress. He nodded. He got his drink. He moved on. I stood there for a second. Then Patrick appeared at my elbow. I hope that wasn't out of line, he said, me looking you up. How much did you find? Enough! He paused. The commendation from the Secretary of the Navy. The citation from the Joint Chiefs. You were part of the team that intercepted the Estrella del Norte. I said nothing. I was an ROTC, he said. Navy. Got out after 4 years, went into teaching. But I know what that operation was, I know what it meant. He looked at me. Your family has no idea who you are, do they? They know who I am. They just don't know what I do. Same thing, kind of. I thought about that. Sometimes. He put his hand out, and when I took it, he held it a beat longer than a normal handshake and looked directly at me. Thank you for your service, Commander, I mean that. And I'm sorry about last night. I should have said something when my father don't. It's your wedding. Everything is already exactly right. He smiled, the same smile I'd seen split his face when Bethany came down the aisle. She's lucky to have you as a sister. She told me so, about 12 times. I laughed. For the first time all weekend, I actually laughed. It happened near the end of the night. My father had pulled out onto the dance floor. The band was playing something slow. My aunt was crying the way aunts cry at weddings, happily and without embarrassment. Bethany was dancing with Patrick's youngest nephew, who was 7 and completely serious about it. I was standing near the edge of the tent when I heard someone say my name. I turned. It was Admiral Constance Webb. She was in civilian clothes, a dark blue dress, her silver hair short as always. But I would have recognized her posture in a blackout. She was the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations. She had been, for the last 3 years, the highest-ranking woman in the United States Navy. She had been one of my instructors at the Naval War College, and she was, apparently, a friend of Patrick's mother, which was a sentence I had not expected to construct this weekend. Vivian Hayes, she said. Small world. Admiral Webb. I stood straighter without deciding to. Some things are in the body. At ease. She smiled. We're not on base. She looked around at the tent, the dancing, the string lights. Beautiful wedding. Yes, ma'am. Your sister? Yes, ma'am. She turned back to me and her expression changed slightly, the particular way her face changed when she was about to say something that mattered. I knew that look from 12 years of intermittent contact. I heard about the review board, she said, quietly enough that no one nearby could have caught it. I said nothing. I want you to know that your conduct throughout that operation was not only defensible, it was exemplary. The board will reach that conclusion. They already have, as of this morning. She paused. I'm telling you now because you deserve to know before Monday's formal notification. The thing about carrying a weight for a long time is that you stop registering it as weight. You start to think of it as just the way your body feels. And then something shifts and you suddenly feel how much you've been holding. I kept my face still. Thank you for telling me, Admiral. It wasn't a small thing what your team did out there, the families of the people on that vessel. She stopped. Well, you know. Yes, ma'am. She looked at me for a moment in that direct, complete way she had. How are you, Vivian? Truly. How are you, Vivian? Truly. I'm stopped. Started again. I'm better than I was this morning. She nodded as though that was a complete answer, which it was. Then she turned toward the dance floor, watched Bethany for a moment, laughed softly at something. Family events, she said. Necessary and terrible. Yes, ma'am. She squeezed my arm once, the kind of gesture that means everything is being communicated and none of it needs words, and moved back toward the table where Patrick's mother was sitting. I stood at the edge of the tent. The band had moved into something faster. My father had retreated from the dance floor slightly out of breath, grinning. My mother was watching Bethany with an expression I could only describe as pure. Whatever else she was or had said or would say, in that moment she was just a mother watching her daughter dance on the happiest night of her life. I thought about the text message. I thought about the drive down, the sleepless hotel night, the rehearsal dinner, my father's introduction, the judge's recalibration, Patrick's handshake. I thought about the review board, resolved as of this morning. I thought about the Estrella del Norte and the 47 people who'd been on it and what had been in the cargo hold, and what would have happened if we hadn't been exactly where we were at exactly the right moment. My mother found me around 10:30 when the night was winding toward its end and the dance floor had thinned to the dedicated few. You wore your uniform, she said. Not accusatory, just observing. I did. She was quiet for a moment. Around us, the night settled. Glasses being collected, the band between songs, the murmur of people saying their goodbyes. Patrick's mother asked about you, she said. She said the Admiral spoke very highly of you. I looked at her. She said, my mother paused, pressed her lips together. She said she hadn't realized how much you'd accomplished. She stopped again. I watched something move across her face that I wasn't sure I'd seen there before. Something that looked like the beginning of understanding that it had cost something to not know. I hadn't realized either. I know. Why didn't you ever tell us? It was the question I'd been waiting to answer for 11 years and had no single answer for. Because you never asked. Because what I do can't be fully told. Because every time I came home, you introduced me as the one still finding her way, and I spent so long trying not to make it strange that I forgot to make it real. I'll do better, I said. Both of us. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached out and straightened my collar, the same gesture as the night before. But this time it was different. This time it was not a correction. It was just a mother's hands on her daughter. Just that. You look like you belong in that uniform, she said. I do, I said. Bethany caught me by the arm on my way to the parking lot, still in her dress, shoes off, carrying them by the straps the way women do at the end of a long and wonderful night. Don't disappear again, she said. Come back for Thanksgiving. Come back for Thanksgiving. Come back for Christmas. Come back for nothing, just come back. I'll try. Try harder. She hugged me, really hugged me the way you hug someone when you're not sure when you'll see them again and you want to make sure they know it mattered. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. I just didn't always know what for. You don't need to know what for. I know. She pulled back and looked at me the way she used to when we were kids, and she was deciding whether to trust me with something. But I want to. Start talking, Vivian. I laughed. She laughed. She laughed. The parking lot was warm and the night smelled like gardenias from the arrangements, still sitting by the tent entrance, and somewhere behind us the band played one last song for the last few people on the dance floor. I drove back to the hotel with the windows down. This time I didn't think about the report or the review board or the rank or the weight of any of it. I thought about Bethany's face when she came down the aisle. I thought about my father taking my hand without being asked. I thought about how it is possible sometimes to go home and leave more whole than you arrived. The air was soft the whole way back. I didn't need the coffee. I wasn't tired at all. I've thought a lot about that weekend since it happened. Not obsessively, I'm not built that way, but the way you return to something that shifted something else. The way you press a bruise to understand where it actually is. What I keep coming back to is this. Nobody in that backyard did anything dramatic. There was no confrontation, no speech, no moment where I stood up and said, let me tell you who I actually am. The correction happened quietly, the way most real corrections do. Admiral Webb crossed a tent, said my name and my rank, and 11 years of being the daughter who never quite landed collapsed in about 4 seconds. That's the thing about silence as a strategy. I had chosen it for years as a kind of protection for myself, protection for the people I work with, protection against the specific exhaustion of explaining classified work to people who will never fully understand it. What I hadn't accounted for was the cost on the other end. Every time I stayed quiet, my family filled the silence with whatever story made sense to them. And the story that made sense to them was, she's adrift, she's struggling, she never found her footing. I handed them that story by not offering another one. That's not blame. I'm not interested in blame, including of myself. It's just cause and effect, the plain mechanics of it. People work with the information they have. My parents weren't cruel people constructing a false narrative. They were two people who genuinely did not know their daughter, because their daughter had kept herself from them in ways she thought were necessary. Some of them were. Some of them weren't. The part that stays with me most is Bethany. What she said in the parking lot after, I've always been proud of you, I just didn't always know what for. That's the line that gets me, even now, because she was telling the truth and also naming something I hadn't fully admitted, that I had let the people closest to me love a version of me that was incomplete. And they'd done it willingly, generously, without complaint. They'd just loved who they could see. Or something in that worth sitting with. Not guilt exactly, more like responsibility. The responsibility to show up fully, not just professionally, but personally. To let the people who matter to you actually know you. Not everything, not the classified parts, not the things you're still processing, but enough. Enough to give them something real to hold on to. Judge Hargrove apologized to me. He didn't have to. He was a man who'd made an assumption, recognized it for what it was, and corrected it without being asked. I respected that more than I expected to. It takes a specific kind of integrity to look at your own conclusion and say I was wrong, not because you were caught, but because being right matters more to you than being comfortable. That's what I want to carry forward. Not the vindication of the moment, not the look on anyone's face when Admiral Webb said my name. The quieter thing underneath it. The reminder that who we are and who we allow ourselves to be seen as are not always the same, and the gap between them is always our own to close. I drove home from Savannah with the windows down. The highway stretched out ahead of me, flat and long and familiar. I thought about calling my mother. I didn't, not that night. But I thought about it, which was new. Which was, maybe, enough of a start.